So, you gonna see Rohirrim, Ride of the Rohan people?
I mean, I have small children, so probably not. But I would like to.
Okay, yeah.
I would like to watch it.
You'd like to go and see it? Yeah.
Pretty much sign me up for any Lord of the
You're
Rings.
gonna watch Rings of Power too, season 2, right?
Same answer. Yeah. Although that I could, I mean, either one.
It's more attainable, I think, at least.
I guess.
Just flick it on the TV or whatever.
I mean,
yeah.
I will get to it.
Nice.
At some point.
Cool.
I will try and watch. I'd probably rather try and watch Rings of Power sooner. I could be wrong. It sounds like they've made it even more serious and crazy, which I already thought Rings of Power was like had some like uneasy violence.
It was kind of dark.
It was dark.
Yeah, which I like. Yeah.
It was not like the PG movies.
Yeah,
or
like
whatever.
little halfling people that are like leaving people behind to die.
The guy breaks his foot and they just leave him.
Yeah.
It's like, holy crap.
They're like, whew, this is a real society here.
What it was like, yeah. I was like, no, that makes sense. You can't. They're nomadic people. You can't. Anyway.
Yeah.
No, but it's this. I didn't think, or I wasn't. After the Hobbit movies, they were 2 movies too long. They, although I still enjoyed, I thought were like pretty good and done with. Lord of the Rings.
This is a bit
the new lines.
A bit of an unexpected renaissance, eh? Like
yeah.
And
it really goes to show. And again, this is the disclaimer here is like I'm fully aware I'm not the nowhere near the Tolkien levels that of fandom that lots of people are.
No, we have friends that will like rip Silmarillion lines at you.
Yeah. And that's not me. I'm the
we're casual.
Yeah.
We really like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But from a casual,
probably because
I've read the books.
Sure.
I haven't read Silmarillion. I'm not like for me it was a bit too heavy of a read.
Yeah. But there's like so much stuff and there's excellent. I think I forget him who he is. I'm sure you guys know. There's a YouTuber guy who just explains all the history. Like it's nuts.
Pretty awesome.
It's just hours and hours of content. But I still really enjoy it. I think for me personally, it had to do with like how many, because I loved so much of like Warhammer Old World, and so much of Warhammer Old World is directly ripped from Middle Earth, like, of course, just like almost straight up. And so I always it was very fun anyway. And also watching the, reading the books and then watching the movies and having the movies look the way I pictured them in my head was also really cool and
amazing.
I remember seeing Fellowship when it came out in the theater, and it was just like it was such a cool experience. But so it makes sense that they have lots of cool stuff to make that, and for whatever reason again you could argue against it, that's fine. It seems like they seem to be doing a better job of it, and at least it seems to be less of a, I don't want to tread on too much on the Star Wars movies and people, but like they seem to have bungled the Star Wars much worse than maybe because they've made too much of it too fast.
Yeah, I mean,
Lord of the Rings seems to
we may be headed for
care.
that. We may be headed for that because ultimately that's why we want to make this video is not that we're experts on this, but just kind of talking a little bit about like how these new products that are being made by Amazon and New Line Cinema, how they interact with what Games Workshop does with licensing and stuff like that. And ultimately, from what I understand, is New Line Cinema is essentially doing this movie not because they want to, but because they have to, to keep the license.
I mean, I think they'll be happy with it.
Yeah, I think so. And we may be, because I think they did like a little bit of a what's ahead. They have a couple movies planned to do, and obviously Amazon wants to recoup some of that money they spent. So they're probably good. They're probably not going to stick around with just one season. One show either. We could see multiple shows kind of come out of.
I think Rings of Power
well.
was like $1 billion for like 5 seasons or something. Like
it was a lot.
They committed to a lot of it. I mean, obviously they could still, I'm sure, exit clause somewhere, but yeah. So, and obviously, if you've watched through the back catalog of our channel a bit, we a common theme is the how the licensed material has done, or how we feel about it in the miniature sphere, and so far the track record is not great. It's like it has its like spectacular highs.
Would you say in the last video when we were talking about Underworlds, the burning star? It does feel a little bit like that, right?
Yeah.
Like you have this like candle in the wind.
I'm gonna let you take it away with the just burst in the song. But obviously, you know, we the big one in recent years was all the various Star Wars related games and products and how they have like the ability to catch lots of new players very quickly, but then they just fizzle very quickly, or like, you know, at some point once all the Luke's Invaders and the classic stuff gets released. Mm-hmm. You know, I know in the licensed game world, the last big one was Lorcana, the card game. You know, I don't know. I know it's doing pretty well in various stores, but it's only a year old, and we'll see in another 2-3 years how that works out. Card games are very fickle anyway. And then obviously here we had a pretty strong Marvel Crisis Protocol, you know, whatever you want to call it, timeline. But even that's quite a bit down. So we've had Song of Ice and Fire. We've had all these licensed games. All the Night Models products seem to have like, it's like I don't regret carrying them because there is money made, but they just don't have that ability to just staying power. The staying power.
Yeah.
Now, The Lord of the Rings is a bit unique because Games Workshop has been making the minis tied in with the movies for like 20 years now, at least. And
was it 2001 maybe the first movie, or 2000? It was
2000,
a long time.
Yeah. So 25 years almost. And they haven't done a lot with it. They've kind of like they reaped so much reward from the beginning and then just let it ride for like a decade and a half, and now that in the last year they started sprinkling new products out, and I'm not counting the odd Forge World thing they would make because we can't sell it anyway. So now last year I definitely saw a little bump from Rings of Power, whether it mattered or not. It got people thinking and talking Lord of the Rings. Like at least
we bought models. We were super excited.
I bought an Elf Army that I like. You know,
I still want to get to that painting. Actually. I still kind of want to get it. It's a fantastic game.
It is.
Just a complete segue, but like it's a great game. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're making a new Ed, which I'm curious about because it seems like the current Ed is very good.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it's odd.
It's just time.
Yeah,
I think for Games Workshop, like we always have to remember that it has nothing to do with how good the game is. No. It's like they're like it's time to make a new edition because we need to cash in on people to play it, right? And there's an element of like. Never discount this if you're a player. Every time a new edition comes out, it opens a door to welcome new people in.
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful thing that people sometimes lose sight of because they get fixated on the fact that like, oh, I like the game the way it is now. Why are they doing this? It's a money grab. It's like, well, yes, it's a money grab. But there are benefits to your community outside of, getting better rules, potentially.
Yeah, this is actually this is gonna be a bizarre tangent, but I
expect nothing less from you. Today.
Yeah. There was on many drives with the kids, various places. I punished myself by listening to sports radio, and they're commenting on there's an athlete it's a contract situation thing, and he's asking for a lot of money or whatever, and they had this guy on one of their pundits or whatever, and he's a negotiator. He's done deals or whatever, and he made this thing that actually is like. So applicable to so many things and what you just said is it like doesn't matter how good the thing is or what like how good their season was or what it's just like timing in the market. So like you can ask for 10 million if you're like if you're like the only guy available or if you're if you're the situation with the term and the years as such, you can ask for lots of things and make it work. So I think there's a bit of that where they just decide we're going to make these additions or make these or price products a certain way because like maybe there isn't anything on the market that's like that right now, or maybe we're because of the hype we think we could do it and we're going to do it. And it's just
there's only one Lord of the Rings miniature game.
Yeah.
So are you going to play it or not?
Exactly.
I guess there's a bit of that, right?
So yeah. So that's the thing. If you're an existing player, now you could just say I'm going to play the old rule, but like some people can make that work.
Yeah.
Some groups can make that work, but often it kind of doesn't all the way work. You're always going to get a faction split off and go, well, we want to do the new thing because that's what Games Workshop's put out, and and then stores would be like, well, if you want to play in my store, you got to buy some products or whatever, and like so whatever the new thing is, even if it's not as good as the old
of you.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Joe, fascists were socialists.
Yeah. Well, whatever the theme of the day is.
Yeah.
When you're asking customers to buy something, you're a fascist. So cycling back to licensing, just for those that don't know, people might ask the question, we get this a lot, is like, how come Games Workshop didn't really release much when Rings of Power came out? Mm-hmm. And that's because Amazon has the rights to a very specific part of Lord of the Rings. Yeah. And New Line Cinema has basically everything else, from my understanding. Mm-hmm. And so they're it's why like Rings of Power is very, it's all the things you know about Lord of the Rings, but like its own story or version of it. Yep. That kind of rhymes with what actually happens, but is unique in itself. Mm-hmm. And the New Line Cinema stuff is going to be a bit more to like the letter of what happened, because they're technically allowed to use a lot more of that stuff.
Yeah, and then on Games Workshop end, they have to make the minis have to look like the movie.
So they're tied to the New Line Cinema deal.
Yeah, like if they make it Aragorn, it has to look like Viggo Mortensen or whatever. Like
stuff like that. I think they're more bound to, and so they can make products. Generally, they have to be approved, I think, by New Line Cinema in a similar way that like Marvel Crisis Protocol needs approval from Disney. Like whoever the brand rep person is, they have a department that handles that sort of stuff, and they're checking and making sure all the stuff fits the bill. Essentially, saying no to things, saying yes to things. Yeah. So there's an approval process there. Mm-hmm. So, I guess so. Like that's why you didn't see any releases really for Rings of Power. They did just like repackage and like re-release some things to kind of capture the hype a little bit, but they didn't really put out too much.
Yeah, they made Neutral, New Elrond. Now that I think about it, there was some very like loose tying, because like Elrond is very prominent in Rings of Power. So it's kind of funny.
He is kind of one of the main characters.
It's kind of funny that that was like him foot and mounted in a very nice plastic mini, and it came with a banner bearer too.
I'm actually surprised they didn't do like a plastic Sauron or something.
Yeah,
that would have been a good opportunity to do that. Just and talk about a model.
And then they did like the Asclepius thing, which again, this would be more of a really loose tangent, but again, Rings of Power does obviously center around what happens there in Mordor, etc. So I don't know, it was interesting. Although they didn't make a Galadriel, so that would have been way too obvious. Or new Numenorians or something.
Galadriel. Yeah. Numenor. You gotta roll those R's, buddy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Literally my favorite part of Rings of Power is how they say everything.
How they say everything.
It's great.
Yeah.
So good. So I actually think you're probably going to see, you're obviously seeing some new models come out recently. They're re-releasing a whole bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, it is all forged with resin. All of the new sculpts are all forged with resin. Mm-hmm. Which is, like, one thing to remember is it basically, those products just completely bypass retail.
Yeah.
So we never touch those things with our hands. There's no margin in it for us. So we don't.
It's good for the players.
It's good. It's good for people that play. But it means that like there's no benefits to a shop carrying it. Mm-hmm. Which, unfortunately, this is just you have to put your business hat on a little bit here. It means there's not a lot of benefit to like, if that's all that's going to come out for Lord of the Rings going forward is a lot of resin kits. There's going to be a lot less interest in us doing anything with it in the shop. Just tangentially, that's how it kind of works.
I'm not going to divert resources to something I can't sell.
And this just is like that's just how it is, right? Mm-hmm. So that's unfortunate. Now we could see with this new Rohan movie, there could be.
I think they're making.
They're probably going to. It would be kind of crazy if they didn't make something, because they have the license already. They can make stuff.
Horsemen and heroes. And,
it would be man. Can you imagine a new Rohan kit after 25 years? That would be a banger.
Yeah, I mean the original one is pretty solid.
Yeah.
But you can definitely update that a little bit, for sure. Yeah.
So we'll wait and see what they've got planned, but that's how it breaks down. So with licensing, anything New Line puts out, technically Games Workshop can produce miniatures for, provided that they get approval and kind of go through those processes. Yeah.
I mean, I would just say that I am still generally impressed that the products, at least on the Games Workshop end with their miniature line, they continue to make, release. It's still talked about, still played. Chris and I remember there was, I don't know what year, maybe by the time we got to, even before the Hobbit movies, maybe that like, was it 08, 09? Like once it was almost a decade since the original 3 were made, the game was not selling in very much in stores. Yeah. It was already pretty, stores that, Games Workshops or stores that had Lord of the Rings walls, they were already like trimming down or liquidating. It wasn't a game that you, as a store manager owner, were like super focused on. It was still very 40K centric. So, and I thought at the time, I was like, well, it had its time. It made a bunch of bucks. Mm-hmm. People enjoyed it. But it's continued to hang around, and I guess that's because the licenses, they still see it as like valuable enough that they're like, we need to keep dripping some things out, keep it going. And again, this is not an indictment on the game or the minis. Like, the game is excellent. Nothing wrong with it. I've always been curious why that, I don't know, IP had that, like, maybe we were Lord of the Rings out after like the first 10 years.
It's possible.
And people just like, or young people didn't care for a little, I don't know. There's the part of it that I'm always like, does it just need is this a product that could really shine with a big re-release? Like if Games Workshop decided to do like a complete like rework of everything, but maybe they're so bound by the licensing.
That's the problem. I think we cycle back to the beginning of this video again. I think we get back to the same place that we get to with our Marvel videos, with our Star Wars videos, is ultimately, why would Games Workshop pour resources into something where they don't have ultimate control when they have lots of intellectual properties where they have full control and, quite frankly, make probably a much better margin on?
I wonder, though, because Games Workshop, they're making some bucks these days.
Oh, they make bucks.
Just a few bucks. Do they, how does, like, is there a way to obtain a license themselves, or is this like, it's all owned by New Line? Or this is where I'm ignorant on the topic. Like, how can you, or do you have to, can you knock the door on a Tolkien heir's house and be like, I would like to make stuff. Here's
now. This is where like up. I feel like public information isn't necessarily like, it's not open information.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is where like the lawyers come in and they go line by line about what you can do, what you can't do.
Oh, I see.
I'm sure at every level there's approval processes. Like, I imagine even New Line Cinema has some level of person they even have to talk to, who's like, the Tolkien person that manages the brand with the estate that may or may not have any agency there, or maybe New Line has like one of those great deals from like 25 years ago where like, as long as it's these things, you carte blanche. It could be that simple, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know that Games Workshop could ever get a deal, like, especially look at how much money Amazon paid for that little bit of stuff they're allowed to use.
Yeah. That's true. That was
crazy money.
Yeah. They did pay a lot.
So I think that's always going to be the catch-22 with these like these branded products that like have a company making another company's thing. Is there are always going to be limits to it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like, the Tolkien universe is a sandbox with borders as well.
Yep.
And I think that's another problem you have too.
Big sandbox.
It's a big sandbox. Yeah. It is a big, and there's maybe less. Well, like you said, there's less people interested in the edges of those sandboxes.
Yeah.
Than in the middle. Whereas in 40K, I feel like a lot of people are interested in the edges.
Oh yeah.
And keep being interested in the edges, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I'd love to know what's going on in Badab and.
Why not, man? Why not? We're going to tell you why it's important. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. If you have even more information, put it in the comments below. Share your wonderful knowledge. If we're ignorant about something, please let us know. And
they will.
Oh yeah, and please just dull those sticks a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
That'd be nice. Where's the little hobby shop? Okay, just the little guy. Where's the little guy? A little micro hobby shop.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
If you like these sort of videos, check us out a couple times a week. We like to put this content out, give us some suggestions, and if you really want to support us, head over to Patreon. We're going to be starting some Patreon-only content soon. Now that we're kind of back in the swing of things in the fall, we're both here every week. So stay tuned, and until next time, guys, take care.